Hi, this is Royce with Viking Wax Press. This is my third video previewing players moving from the UFL to the NFL. This video will be quite a bit longer than the previous two, as it covers the UFL players who have a chance to play in one of the 13 NFL preseason games on Saturday, August 17th, 2024. As of Thursday night, August 16th, there are 63 UFL players who have signed with NFL teams. 7 were subsequently released, and 1 retired. A whopping 40 of the 55 UFL players still on an NFL team could potentially play on Saturday the 17th. I will post this table out onto my Viking Wax Press Twitter X account if you want to take a closer look. Quick note before we get too far, I live in Oregon, so the times on the left side of these schedules are Pacific time. Okay, the Ravens Scouts have missed the boat completely on UFL players, but the Falcons Scouts are on board. They have 5 players from the UFL 2024 season who could play Saturday morning. All UFL tackle Jared Jones-Smith is one of 2 UFL offensive linemen signed by the Falcons. The experience edge definitely goes to Jared Jones-Smith, starting 18 games over the past 2 seasons for the Battlehawks. If he can avoid any more penalties in the preseason, I think he's got a great chance to help the Falcons this year. Julian Davenport is the second UFL tackle that Falcons brought in. He has the size to make the jump, but is he better than Jared Jones-Smith? Not in my opinion, and that's good news for the Brahmas, who would love to have Julian back. Prince Emili came to the Brahmas this spring after spending some time with the Bills last year. He put in a strong performance for one of the top defensive teams in the UFL. 3 sacks in 7 starts is great for a nose tackle. If for some reason he doesn't make the Falcons, he will anchor the Brahmas D-line again next year. Jordan Thomas would have started on almost every other UFL team, but the Stallions also had all USFL tight end Jace Sternberger, so Jordan was used primarily on 2-point conversion plays, which, for some unknown and frustrating reason, aren't tracked as official stats by the UFL or the NFL. But Jordan caught a plethora of them over the past 2 seasons with the Guardians and the Stallions. He was clutch for the Stallions in the postseason too. He's a huge target even by NFL standards, so I can see him backing up Kyle Pitts for the Falcons this fall. Story Jackson just signed with the Falcons, so he might not get into the game on Saturday, but check out what he did in a backup role for the Renegades this year. 25 solo tackles, 15 assists, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass defensed. One of the best defenders off the bench in the UFL this year. I hope they give him a fair shot to make the practice squad at a minimum. The Bengals-Bears game has 5 UFL guys who could see playing time. 4 standouts from last year, and 1 who recently signed during the offseason. The Panthers snapped up Nate Brooks when the Stallions left him unprotected during the January UFL Super Dispersal Draft. Nate seemed to use it as motivation and had a great year for the Panthers, recording 26 solo tackles, 2 TFLs, an interception, and 6 passes defended. Excellent stats for a 10-game season. Cincinnati should keep him around just to keep their starters on their toes. Hakeem Butler was my favorite XFL wide receiver. I went back and rewatched my 2024 preseason UFL top wide receivers video, and Hakeem was my number 1, even after the XFL merged with the USFL, and sure enough, he ended up being the league-leading receiver in the UFL, even though he was on a team loaded with other top receivers. During the Bengals' first preseason game, they only targeted him a few times and he only got 1 catch, so I hope they give him more of a fair chance this Saturday. Joshua Pryor signed with the Stallions after this season, so he never had the chance to play for the UFL champions before the Bengals decided to give him a try. He saw some action during the NFL preseason last year, playing for the Washington Commanders. If he doesn't make the Bengals, he's got his team locked in for the 2025 UFL season. All UFL defensive tackle Carlos Davis had the second most QB sacks in the UFL this year, and made life miserable for opposing quarterbacks. If I were to pick a UFL defender who is the most likely to injure a quarterback, I'd pick Carlos, because he plays with such reckless abandon and lack of mercy. For the sake of future UFL QBs, I hope he remains a Bengal until he retires. When Frank Ginda got injured midway through the season for the Panthers, Javon White picked up where Frank left off, showing a nose for the ball and put great stats up on the board. 25 solo tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and a pass defended. The Bears were paying attention and found a standout performer. More experience could be useful, so I won't be too surprised if I see him make it back onto the Panthers next spring. The Giants-Texans game has only one UFL player for Saturday because the Giants released Jacob Sailors, who was the UFL's leading rusher at the running back position. A confusing move for a team that can obviously use the help. Malik Fisher was near the top of the UFL in quarterback sacks and was one of the few bright spots for the otherwise underperforming defenders. I believe he's good enough to make the Texans practice squad at the very least. The Lions seem to like Panthers named Jake. They signed kicker Jake Bates and guard Jacob Burton, and to my knowledge, the Chiefs haven't tried out any UFL players, so we won't even mention them. Former Arkansas Razorback Jake Bates is my favorite kicker to come along since Novo Bojovic donned a plum and champagne Panthers helmet in the 80s. Bates skyrocketed to fame when, on Easter, he nailed a 64-yard game-clinching field goal. The amazing story and booted ball even made it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I took these pictures when I visited the hall with my brother Aaron in June. Jake connected on 3 other 60-plus yarders during the season, and while his field goal percentage dropped as the year went on, his ability to kick the long ball is the reason he's a lock to start as the kicker for the Lions this year. He just hit another 64-yarder in practice the other day. Go, Jake, go. Jacob Burton is a great pass blocker with a shot to make the Lions. While I'm pulling for every single one of these guys to reach their dream, the reality is, out of all the guys I'm previewing today, only a small handful of them will end up sticking with the NFL. Even then, it will likely be a position on the practice squad. It all depends on position depth of the team and then injuries. The good thing is, if they do get cut by their NFL team, their rights are retained by their UFL team, so they'll have a great chance to play in the UFL come springtime, albeit for a quarter of the salary. The Vikings-Browns game has 3 players to preview. Marcus Haynes and Rex Sanahara were released so they can go back to the Brahmas if they don't get another shot in the NFL this fall. My favorite NFL team, the Vikings, signed Jalen Redmond, who looked great in 4 games with the Renegades before he was injured early in the season. Check it out, though. 5 tackles for loss and 4.5 QB sacks in just 4 games. The dude was dominant. I would love to see him stick with my Vikings. Chim Okorafor started 3 games for the Panthers this spring. If you're just looking at his PFF stats, you'd question why the Browns even bothered to give him a look. However, if you look at his size, you'll see his NFL potential. He is a space eater to be sure. Still, I'd say his chances of him making the Browns are slim. A better O-line option for the Browns is Zach Johnson. He has the same size, more experience, and better skills. He could be a good fit in the dog pound, and if not, he'll be great on the Stallions once again. The Seahawks-Titan game has 1 player left for Saturday, as both Ricky Person and Marcus Sims were released with injury settlements. That leaves Ty Scott, who is hoping he can support the great receiving tandem of Lockett and Metcalf in Seattle. If you watched him for the Defenders this year, you know he's got the potential. Can he break through the depth chart? That is the question. The Bills-Steelers game now has 2 UFL players to watch, with the Steelers signing Keandre Thomas just hours before this recording on Thursday. As a side note for this game, many of us spring football fanatics will be watching to see if former XFL standout quarterback Ben DiNucci gets any time to shine for the Bills. The Bills made their first UFL signing this week, and it was a huge one. They inked Deon Cain, who, for the past 2 years, was arguably the best wide receiver in spring football. I gave my vote to Hakeem Butler, but it's Deon who has hoisted the championship trophy twice. He was the 2023 USFL Championship Game MVP and makes big-time grabs in clutch situations. The Bills should keep a hold of him. Keandre Thomas was initially signed by the Carolina Panthers, then released on August 8th, and now he's back for another swing. As good as he can be on some plays, I am sad to say that when bumps and bruises heal for the Steelers, Keandre will once again be on the outside looking in. The Jets-Panthers game is chock full of UFL talent, with 4 suiting up for the Jets and 1 for the Panthers. The 2 highlighted were released and should be back in the UFL next spring. Cole Laval is an 18-game starter for the Brahmas over the past 2 seasons. He even stuck with the Brahmas when the new regime took over last season, which means he is dependable, coachable, flexible, and good at what he does. The Jets might want to keep a guy like him to help protect Rodgers. Or, if Rodgers goes down again, maybe Adrian Martinez. Adrian was the UFL MVP last year and has looked good so far throughout the Jets preseason. His strength is knowing when to tuck and run he does. He led the UFL in rushing yards last year from the quarterback position. Can you name another time that has been done? He can improve on his reads, but 15 passing TDs and a QBR of 97.2 is far above average. Chances are high he will stick with the Jets this season. Isaiah Winstead might not look great on paper, but those who watched him play for the Renegades saw a guy making big gains whenever you heard his name. The eye test tells you he is NFL ready in spite of not playing a starting role for the UFL this season. Brandon Smith is another receiver who wasn't utilized enough this spring and could be a great addition to an NFL practice squad. Check out this grab he made in the Week 2 preseason game on Sunday. Walter Palmore has a chance to be the first Panther-to-Panther UFL to NFL connection. Super solid at putting the pressure on offenses, but can improve when it comes to wrapping guys up. I'd love to see him make the Fall Panthers, but I have a feeling he'll end up back with the Spring Panthers. The Commanders released Ramiz Ahmed earlier this week, leaving 3 other UFL players to cover for this game. Armani Taylor Prelo, who also goes by Alex, did a solid job for the Stallions this spring and was always the tallest guy on the field. His size alone should help him crack the NFL, but he'll need to improve on his run blocking. That said, the Commanders need help everywhere, am I right? Mike Harley Jr. broke records at the University of Miami, but hasn't had as much success at the pro level, bumping around from team to team in the NFL and then being cut by the DC Defenders just before the season started this year. The Dolphins like speed at receiver, and Mike has that, but time will tell if he can get back to college form. Now, Wyatt Ray is an impact defender, skilled at getting around the edge and wreaking havoc. His 6 tackles for loss and 5.5 QB sacks were near the top of the league, plus he can also drop back into coverage as needed. The Dolphins have a gem here. Will they give him enough light to shine? 3 UFL players could take the field in the Cardinals-Colts game. Delonte Hood was okay at breaking up passes for the Renegades, but his overall stats weren't that great. I don't see him lasting beyond the preseason. The Cardinals see enough there to give him a chance, though, so I hope he proves me wrong. 5 different pro teams have signed Hassan Hall, including the Brahmas this summer after the season ended. The Cardinals are going to give him another chance to make their practice squad for the second time in less than a year. If he doesn't, the Brahmas could use him as insurance in case they lose Lovett or McFarland. For the Colts, Levi Bell will try to overcome a UFL season where he wasn't able to play due to injury. He does have the advantage of having spent the last NFL season on the Seahawks practice squad. When he plays, he dominates. Rams play the Chargers, and I am excited to see this LA matchup because I'm a huge Luis Perez fan. But let's take a quick look at the Rams prospects first. They added 2 O-linemen from the UFL. The first, Alec Lindstrom, played for the Memphis Showboats. The Showboats O-line was the worst in the UFL, so I don't have a lot of confidence in Alec making the Rams team. I personally think Matt Caskey has a better chance to make the team, as he was part of the Stallions team that dominated the UFL. His PFF blocking stats are above average, but they could be partially that way due to the overall strength of the Stallions' stellar offensive line. At 6'7", 325, he certainly has the build to make it in the NFL. Luis Perez has played in the Alliance of American Football, XFL 2020, the Spring League, the USFL in 2022, back to the XFL in 2023, winning a championship there with the Renegades, and then remained a Renegade when the XFL merged with the USFL and became the UFL. That's 6 different spring leagues, and Luis played well in all of them. His experience should give him a leg up on learning plays on the fly. He had his best year so far this spring, launching it for over 2,300 yards with a QBR of 98.4, enough to be considered the best pure passing QB in the UFL this past season. Adrian Martinez may have won the league MVP, but if I had to choose a leader of men to run my team, I would choose Luis. He's a true field general. 2 more of my favorite UFL players should see playing time in the Bucs-Jaguars game. Sal Cannella has played 3 seasons of spring football, 1 for the Breakers in 2022 and 2 for the Renegades. He's been a top 2 or 3 receiving tight end each of those seasons, so I'm hoping he can get his foot in the door with the Buccaneers because he's earned it. Breeland Speaks is my favorite UFL defensive player. This season, he was the UFL Defensive Player of the Year, league leader in QB sacks, league leader in tackles for loss, and all-around steamroller for the Panthers for 2 straight years now. He spent some time with the 49ers last fall and 5 other NFL teams prior to that. He should be a lock to make this Jaguars team. All 4 UFL players in the Cowboys-Raiders game will wear blue and silver. Come on, Raiders, you're missing out. Linebacker Willie Harvey comes to the Cowboys from the Battlehawks. He was the second best defender in the UFL this season. He had 43 solo tackles, 9 TFLs, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 6 passes defended. Excellent for a linebacker. The Cowboys seem to understand the value the UFL can provide, so I'm confident they'll give all 4 of these guys a fair look. Deontay Burnett stays in the Dallas metro area and is a solid prospect. He caught 33 passes for 306 yards and 2 TDs from QB Luis Perez. He could be one of the top UFL receivers next season if the Cowboys cut him loose. Another receiver trying to make the Cowboys team is DC defender Kelvin Harmon. Kelvin had 31 catches for 375 yards and 3 TDs for the Defenders. Very similar numbers to Deontay Burnett. Which one would you keep? Cole Cabral played center for the Stallions in 2023 before bumping over to the Panthers and playing guard this year. He didn't start for the Panthers this year, which tells me he may not be quite skilled enough to make the jump to the NFL. Come on, prove me wrong, Cole. Finally, the UFL just announced they released Justin Hall so he could sign with the NFL, but a team has yet to be announced. By the time you watch this video, there should be an answer on the internet for you. Justin Hall is an undersized wide receiver, even by UFL standards, but that didn't stop him from being a top 5 receiver this spring. Some even put him up as far as number 1. He is speedy, dodgy, sure-handed, and plays with a chip on his shoulder. As much as I loved to watch him play receiver in the UFL, if he makes the cut in the NFL, it will likely be as a punt or kick return specialist, which he also did in the UFL. Whew, that was a lot of players. Stay tuned for more UFL to NFL player previews coming soon. Like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more videos like this. This has been Royce with Viking Wax Press. God is good, y'all. Take care.